Today is the third day of the teaching. First of all, I would like to begin by offering my greetings to Gyawa Gyatsak Goshri Drung Rinpoche, Mingyu Rinpoche, foremost among the lamas, tulkus, the khenpos, and spiritual friends, the monks and nuns from the various monasteries, and all the faithful members of the public who have come from all over the world. Today we will continue the teachings on the great Geshe Potowa's long soliloquy, and picking up where we left off yesterday. So the place we got to was now is the time to look for a good guru. But some say, what will going to see a guru do? What good will it do? It would be better to fake meditating. Many people talk like that. You need to gather incalculable accumulations to meet a good guru. So what good will it do not to look now and instead keep faking it? If you meet a good guru, you'll develop samadhi, and through the guru's blessings, because of that you'll realize your mind and awaken to Buddhahood. But some would rather not be criticized than awaken to Buddhahood. Generally, Dharma does not come from ambitiousness and assertiveness. Dharma depends on faith, diligence, and prajna. Those gathered around a spiritual friend should be there to see how much they can direct their minds toward the Dharma. Not to see who is the most ambitious, who the most assertive, or who the biggest swindler. There are those who, when a spiritual master compassionately gives a profound Dharma teaching, do not call that compassionate. But if he gives something material, they do say he has been compassionate. These days, they criticize those who go looking for a guru and pith instructions. But when someone gets a loan of 2 bushels, those who care for him say, hey, things are working out for you. You should go over there. And in the meantime, I'll look after your house. But that is a mistake. So, here in this passage, it's difficult to give explanations of every single word. The words of the Kadampa masters are mixed with regional dialects, so the way they put the words together is different. And the way they put the words together is different. They mix with regional dialects, so sometimes explaining each individual word is difficult. So I can only give you an explanation of the general meaning, not of each individual word. In any case, what this passage says is that if someone should get a loan from someone else, he's gotten a loan from something, and his friends and relatives will say, what they'll say is, you should go and get that loan, and until you do, we'll look after your house for you. We'll take care of it for you, they say. There are many people say this. But no one ever says, go look for the pith instructions that will free you from samsara. I'll help you out in that. Whatever you need, I'll provide you whatever you need. But that's mistaken. And the reason that this is mistaken is that they say, when you want to accomplish things for this life, I'll help you out. But when it comes to future lives, there are very few who will support you or provide for your needs. Actually, compared to future lives, the present life in terms of time, it's just temporary. It's a short term. When you talk about the future lives, then there's the life after that and the life after that. There's no end. It's a very long time. There's a long way we have to go. It's a very extremely long-term situation, so they're far more important. But the people who recognize the importance of the lasting happiness of future lives, or who are able to understand it, are extremely rare. Now to continue with the text. That we will have to leave everything good behind and go off alone is not some tale we have heard without knowing whether it is true or not. It is plain to see now that people, their eyes agape, leave absolutely everything behind and go. Yet those who are clever, assertive, ambitious do not sense this. Even old folks who have reached the age of 80 have ambitions for this life. All those with shallow dispositions who act on short-term happiness have little character. You may say you won't be happy when you're old, but if you only act on ambitions for this life, you will be even less happy in the next. So what this says is, and to basically summarize it, to say the main point of it, is no matter how excellent our pleasures in this life may be, we have to leave absolutely everything behind and give it all up at death. We can't take the pleasures of this life along when we die. We can't take the prosperity or abundance of this life along. The fact that death is going to happen to us, it's not some tale or some myth. If it were just a story, it's possible you might have some doubts and wonder whether it is true or not. But this is not just telling a tale. And now we can actually see it with our own eyes, that everyone will die. Like, for example, there are many people who are the same age as us who die, and many who are younger than us die. There are many who are older than us today. We actually see this plainly. It's not a story that it happened once 100 years ago, or that it happened once 1,000 years ago. However, in any case, when we engage in the activities of this life, even if we become a universal emperor, and a universal emperor is, usually considered the most, among humans in this world, is considered the most wealthy and powerful. Well, that's what we call a universal emperor. But even if we become a universal emperor, we'll still feel deprived of wealth and resources. Our desires will not be satisfied. We'll still feel our desires will not be satisfied. We'll feel like we are bereft of wealth and resources. It never feels that you are not deprived if your wishes have not been met. If you know how to be content, even if you're a disabled beggar whose hands and feet have been amputated, living in the rough by the side of the road, you can still bear life. You can still handle it. Basically, no matter how much power and wealth you have, in the end it'll be like drawing a hair out of butter. You alone will have to go on, all by yourself. There's no way to take any of your wealth, possessions, or power. But people who we say are smart do not understand this situation. They don't know. Likewise, people who are good at making plans, and have a very broad view of things, they are also unable to really consider this. Those who are said to have a lot of experience are unable to develop the thought that death will happen to them, the fear of death. Such a fear never arises, or a strong feeling never happens in their beings. Forget about other people. Even elderly people do not feel it. Forget about others. Even someone who's currently stricken with a serious illness, such as someone with cancer, still tries to avoid death. No matter how bad the illness, even they don't have the really intense feeling, I'm going to die. I'm definitely going to die. Even they don't have that feeling, no need to mention anyone else. So these days, we say that if we, from right now, if we don't accumulate a few fine things, then when we near death, when we are old, we won't be happy. And so we work hard now. But such work is pointless. And the reason is because when we were young, we have no time to enjoy ourselves. Because we have to work hard so that we won't have any difficulties when we're old. And then once we get old, we aren't happy, and everything starts getting worse and worse. And that's how we are until we die. If we're going to be like that until we die, then there'll be no happiness in the next life. For this reason, if we spend our entire lives from the time we're young until we're old only working towards our ambition for this life, working for the sake of this life from the time we're young on, we will not be happy in our next life. It is important to develop an understanding of this. The reason is because if we work hard now so that we can be happy when we're old, if that is the case, then we should think that now that we won't be happy in future lives. The rationale or the reasons for thinking about future lives is exactly the same. Now from the text, please look at the text. Some say that you cannot include death in discussions. If you do not include death in your discussions, then you will only think that you won't die. Your thoughts will only be of this life, so you think, today I'll do this, tomorrow I'll do that, next year I'll do this, I'll do that in my old age. These are only thoughts of this life. Practitioners should do the opposite, not include immortality in their discussions. Then you can make preparations for death. Our minds should be comfortable at the time of death. We must leave everything good from this life behind and go, so worldly abundance is incompatible with being a practitioner. Now we admire worldly people, and they admire us back. But being incompatible with the worldly means that instead of admiring them, we should turn our backs on them. And so what this says is, what some people say is, you can't include death in your discussions. Now, talking about this is hard. There's no point in talking about it. Right now we are alive, and so there's no point to saying, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. It just scares you. There's no point to saying it. While you are alive, you should make plans for the next 10 or for the next 20 years as if you're going to live. So the people who only speak like that, but for us Dharma practitioners, Actually, we should not include immortality in our discussions. The reason why is because when we talk, we should never say, I won't die. We should be saying, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I don't know when I'm going to die. I don't know what will cause my death. That is the way we should think. If that happens, then we will prepare for death. We will start doing now the things that will help us when we die. We will prepare ourselves. When we need to practice Dharma, like in the past, when Gampopa and his disciples, such as Pakmo Drupa, Dusum Khenpa, and so forth, spoke about this in their public talks. Sometimes we say community Dharma. In their public talks, what they say is to wrap it all up. What we need is that when we are lying on our deathbed, the last bed we lie on, eating our last bite of food, drinking our last sip of water, at that moment, we must have confidence. We have to have comfort in our minds. And if that does not occur, you might say that you spent your entire life practicing Dharma. But if you do not feel comfortable and satisfied when we get to the time of death, it will not have been much benefit. For this reason, we practitioners should never say that we won't die. We should always say, we will die, and think about that instead. So merely getting married does not help. Merely not getting married doesn't help. These are from the text. Merely not getting married does not help. You must turn your back on the 8 worldly concerns. Gathering merit means that your mind becomes the Dharma, not that you are well respected or have good clothes. You might be sick with leprosy, blind with your hands and feet amputated, your clothes so badly tattered that no one could take hold of them. But if your mind becomes Dharma, that is called accumulating merit. Nowadays, everyone seems to call those who are good at accruing wealth men and women of good character. But I have seen many amass wealth and then die. Even animals know very well how to gather wealth. Marmots know how to gather caches of tuber. Bees gather honey, pikas stack hay, and birds construct their nests. If you are generous instead, you will not be born as a hungry ghost, and when born in another realm, you will not be poor, as is said in the verses summarizing Prajnaparamita. We praise having ambitions for old age, but it would be better to sow a long-lasting crop to that same degree by practicing the Dharma properly. So what this says is, for the reasons that I explained before, for us monastics, merely not getting married does not help. Not getting married, not having a spouse alone doesn't help. There's a lot to understand here. Karma Chatme said in his Mountain Dharma, so that we Tibetans have only a single vow. And so having only a single vow, what that means is, generally for monastics, there are the 4 precepts, or the 4 defeats. And taking life, taking that which is not given, sexual activity, and lying, giving all these 4 up. So lying is not lying about supreme human qualities. But in Tibet, there's only one vow, and that vow is, we say, if a monk just doesn't meet his wife, then we say his vows are pure. That's what we say. But the way things actually are, is that really what is said in the Vinaya, in the Buddha's words in the Vinaya? It's not. In Tibet, there used to be a lot of people who practiced sorcery. Not only would they kill people, they'd say, I killed them with my sorcery. They boast about it. It's even written in many biographies. So at the same time as they're monastic, they killed people by doing sorcery. And in Tibet, this was not considered wrong. But it is taking life, isn't it? And there's lying about supreme human qualities. It's really easy to commit. And you start to please many different people in your activities, start to really flourish and take off. And then you might say, oh, I see gods, or maybe you'll say, I see ghosts. And even if you haven't realized emptiness, you pretend you have. If you don't have clairvoyance, you pretend you do. This is something that happens all the time, even these days. But as soon as you tell such a human lie about having supreme human qualities, you've broken your vows. But sometimes I wonder whether even the people who give vows know if they've broken their own vows by telling lies about the supreme human qualities. So I wonder this. And then there's taking that which is not given. That's what we say is stealing, right? Stealing it's basically the same. In brief, and the one vow in Tibet is just not meeting your wife. That is enough to be called a pure monk. People will say that your vows are pure. But that's not okay. That's not, if you follow the Buddha's words in the Vinaya, that's not okay. Generally, if you know the Vinaya well, keeping your vows well is not all that difficult. It's not that hard. And the reason this comes down to is that the Bhagavan Buddha has great compassion. It's not that he's forcing anyone. It's not like he's a tyrant or controlling. So in the Vinaya, if you encounter real difficulty where you're unable to keep the vow, then what you should do is that you need to give back your vows. You should give back your vows, and if you do, there's a benefit. Oh, it won't work out. I can't keep these vows. I'm having difficulties. When you really have a big difficulty, and at that point, then you should give back your voice. Giving back your precepts is actually easier than taking them. It's easier than taking the vows. You need to have many different conditions to take the vows, but to give them back, you merely need to tell a qualified person, I'm giving back my vows, and that alone is all you need to do. And if you do that, then in the future, if you'd like to be able to take the precepts again, you may. And when you take the vows again later, then they're pure when they arise. If you do not do that, and then when you have a great difficulty, and if you think, oh, I'm going to get embarrassed if I give back my vows, and you think about what people might think, then in the end you'll have great difficulties. And you'll lose your vows, you'll break your vows and all that. And if that happens, it's difficult for you. And in the future, if you want to take the vows again, you won't be able to truly receive them. And so if you know this point, then even though many people think that keeping the vows means you have to keep your vows even if you can't, it doesn't mean that at all. It's as it says here, merely not getting married doesn't help. A monastic is someone who should be revolted by samsara and who has the intention to be emancipated from samsara. You can't say that just not getting married makes you a monastic. So it's not only humans who know how to do these worldly activities of overcoming enemies and helping your friends. Even animals know how to do these. Potowa gives several examples, right? Like marmots, they're a type of rodent, right? In my homeland, the marmots will gather droma, which are like tubers. They're small sweet potatoes. So when we, in the autumn, when we harvest the sweet potatoes, if you look in marmot dens, they have a lot of really good droma tubers. They're really big ones. And they always have the best droma. They've gathered them all up. But our older generation won't take them. We won't touch them because the marmots went through a lot of effort to get them. It's not good to take them, we say. So it's like this. Even animals know how to gather wealth. Animals also know how to make their own homes, their own dens. And if they need to repel their enemies, the animals also know how to do that. For this reason, you don't necessarily have to be human to protect your friends and subdue your enemies. Even animals know how to do it. And so here so please take a look at the text again. To continue with the text, to say you understand the Dharma is to say that you know the methods to achieve Buddhahood. The words are not the point. Instead of saying you have knowledge of the path, it is better to set out on the path and go. If you do not start practicing now, you may well think that you will meditate after you have made all your preparations, but that time will never come. You'll use up your whole life preparing. What this is saying is that there is a difference between knowing the Dharma and understanding it. And the reason that they're different is that if you really know the Dharma and understand it as it is, if you can understand it as it should be understood, you will be able to practice it. And in order to develop that understanding, you need to know it, because you can't understand something you don't know. But there are many things we know but don't understand. So in brief, when we say we understand the Dharma, if we should explain understanding the Dharma as meaning that we are knowledgeable about the path to achieving Buddhahood. That is what understanding the Dharma means. Other than that, merely being able to explain the words does not help. So Potowa is saying it's better to set out on the path than to just have knowledge of the path. Instead of just having knowledge about the way and saying you should go here and then go there, it's actually better to set out on the path and go. We can explain orally, with our mouths, we can explain the entire presentation of the 5 paths and 10 levels. But who's actually going through the 5 paths and 10 levels? No one. Is there anyone here that, have you ever seen anyone who's actually even on the lesser path of accumulation? It's difficult to say there is anyone. So merely talking about the presentation of the 5 paths and 10 levels does not help. We have to go down its path. We need to be able to practice it. We need it now. We need to start now. It's as the old Kadampa master said, all Dharma is to be practiced today. No matter what practice you are doing, it is to be done today. There's no practice that should be done tomorrow. We need to practice it now. If you say, I'm going to practice it, I really will, but first I'm going to get ready. I'm going to get ready to practice. There'll never be a time when you've finished your preparations. There's the danger that you use up your entire life getting ready. And so for that reason, merely mouthing the words now doesn't help. You need to develop understanding of it within your being. If you develop when you develop that understanding of the meaning in your being, then you will be able, only at that point, only then will you be able to put it into practice. Then you will have reached the beginning of the 5 paths and 10 levels. You'll be at the trailhead to the path to enlightenment. So now please take a look at the text. Back in the text it says, some say that Tantra and Vinaya are exclusive of each other, but they have misunderstood. If something that occurs is an inappropriate basis for the mantra, then it is not the Vinaya. If something occurs that violates the Vinaya, it is a sign of it not being secret mantra. To reap harvests in the fall, you must sometimes irrigate the field and sometimes you must till it and make furrows. In doing so, you concentrate all your efforts and the furrows yield a crop. Geshes who know the Dharma well all love to talk. They do not initially practice Dharma out of a fear of death. They study and learn, thinking that they should at least avoid being criticized by people. They should be well respected, be called a teacher, an elder, a bhikshu, a geshe. Then the monastery tutors and insiders will have to curry favor with them. They'll take full ordination and pretend to be especially venerable so that everyone will call them practitioners. They study the scriptures a bit, get a few pith instructions, and then they say they practice meditation. They make use of various methods to gain a higher position in the ranks than anyone else and have jostling crowds exclaim, "What an amazing geshe!" Such geshes and so forth are focused on the hubbub of fame and lack any of the causes and conditions for liberation from samsara. What good is a teacher learned in Dharma that is not an antidote for the 5 poisons? What can cure an illness that cannot be remedied by medicine? So what this is saying is that some people say that Tantra and the Vinaya are exclusive of each other. People who practice Tantra can't practice Vinaya. People who practice Vinaya are not allowed to practice Tantra. There are people who say this, but this is a question of saying things you don't really understand. If something is inappropriate for the Tantra, it isn't Vinaya. If something happens that's against the Vinaya, it's not Tantra. And so for that reason, basically, whether it is a secret mantra or whether the Vinaya or any other Dharma, it's like when we practice plant a field. Sometimes we need to irrigate the field. Sometimes we need to till the field. Like we have to plow it with oxen. And so like we concentrate all our efforts on that one thing in order to see whether we have good... We concentrate all efforts to see will we have good crops in the fall. Likewise, whatever practice we do, whether the Tantra or the Vinaya, it all needs to be piled on top of the afflictions. We need to gather all the antidotes in one place and pile them all on top of the afflictions. And then whether we're practicing the secret mantra or practicing the Vinaya, whatever practice we do, there's no practice for which we don't need to put this life entirely out of mind. There's no practice that doesn't involve abandoning the afflictions. There's no practice in the secret mantra where you don't need to abandon afflictions. No such practice is taught, nor is any such practice taught in the Vinaya where you don't need to put this life out of mind and abandon the afflictions. Sometimes geshes and kempos who know a lot of Dharma, these kempos, they really like to use their mouths. They like to say different things. They like to talk about so many different things. They're really quite talkative. They like to speak, but from the very beginning, their motivation has been crooked. And the reason is because from the very first, when they entered the grade of the Dharma, they didn't develop a fear of death and a wish for liberation. They just did it not to disappoint people, or so that people wouldn't criticize them, or so that people would look up to them. They want people to say, oh, he's a real master, a teacher, an elder of the teachers, a bhikshu, a geshe. And then they engage in listening, contemplation, and meditation. And after they've done their listening, contemplation, and meditation, then they go to some monastery and stay there. They try to become the monastery's kempo or a steward or some important monastic official, so that everyone else would have to curry favor with them and watch their faces. And then they take like the full ordination. They take the bhikshu vows. And they pretend to be venerable so that everyone will praise them, saying, "Oh, what a really venerable, good Lama, a real practitioner." And this is how they act. And then they get a few pith instructions and say, "Oh, I'm going to do some meditation now." They say, "I'm going to go spend a few years or a few months in some remote area and do retreat practice." And then they leave. And then everyone gathers around in a crowd saying, "Oh, what an amazing geshe." And so if they become famous like that, then everyone's crowded around them, that's enough for them. That's basically all their entire aim. And for such individuals, for such geshes and khenpos, there's no liberation from samsara. There's no opportunity. They have no chance. And this is because no matter what dharma we practice, it must act as an antidote for suffering. If you don't make it an antidote for the suffering, being learned about the dharma and being able to explain it to people does not help. Actually, dharma is a medicine for curing the illness of the afflictions. If the medicine can't cure the illness, then what's gone wrong? So who can cure an illness that is resistant to medicine? No one can. The medicine of the true dharma must be able to cure the illness of the afflictions, but if it can't, your mind stream will become so wild that no one will be able to handle it. And it's like you'll be out of control. So basically, it needs to help your own mind stream. If it doesn't help your own mind stream, then what good are the fame and renown? If you're going to be reborn in the lower realms in your next life, your fame and renown won't follow you, right? Likewise, pretending to be venerable and to be keeping the vows when you're not revolted by sensory pleasures does not help. This is because who can fool the mirror of the Lord of Death? You might be able to fool a few people, like you can probably fool some people in this life, but the Lord of Death has a mirror, and he has a mirror, and he can see the facts. He can see what's right and what's not. He can see it. It all appears there. So you can't fool the Lord of Death. And so for this reason, the way we should understand the word spiritual friend is it should be someone who helps others turn away from misdeeds. Someone who can assist and help others avoid committing misdeeds and help them accumulate misdeeds and someone who can help others avoid committing and accumulating misdeeds and wrongs. That is what a spiritual friend means. But what happens is that everyone calls a great meditator, or good lama, or khenpo, or geshe, and when they're called that, all they do is they accumulate so many misdeeds so that their own rituals might spread very widely. They only try to help people by committing misdeeds. And so those who do whatever they can to help the students around them avoid misdeeds or suffering and bring themselves to virtue bring their students to virtue are extremely rare. They all give wrong advice and teach them the wrong path and guide people in this way. People who teach a good path are rare. Now to continue with the text, what good will high regard, good management, and work do for you if you have not extinguished your own wishes and developed conviction and karmic results deep within? What will acting venerably do for you if you are not revolted by samsara and sensory pleasures? Who can fool the Lord of Death's mirror of karma? What good is a geshe who does not have even a smidgen of bodhicitta or altruism and who really desires the 8 concerns? Who will you appoint your helper and friend in sorrow when you experience the ripening of your wrong actions as suffering? You should have a thought differently and avoided pursuing only sensory pleasures and greatness in this life, but you did not. You have not thought whatever you could do could to develop, or you have not done whatever you could to develop the Dharma in your own being or anyone else's. You have not tried to focus your attitude on the immediate, and that is at fault. You should, like noble Saripurudita, want nothing but Buddhahood. Making this life most important and practicing the Dharma on the side will not work, but no one will listen. If you do not recall death, you will do whatever is most profitable in this life. You will even be able to violate your Guru's commands if they do not measure up to your ambitions. If it seems it will profit you in this life, you will pretend to be so faithful and so devoted to the Guru. Deep down, this annoys me. In brief, the moment you make distinctions within your mind between your own and others who have bias between them, who are near and far, it's definite that you have not developed bodhicitta. It's certain that individuals who lack bodhicitta within their mind streams will not achieve Buddhahood. There is no hope for them. And for this reason, you should have no partisanship or any thoughts of any factions, discriminating between your own side that you protect and other side. So if you commit misdeeds in order to protect your own, and this is a wrong path, we could say. This is wrong for anyone, for any Kempo or Geshe. And so that is, we should leave it for today. And so tomorrow will probably be the last day of the teachings. Generally, with this teaching this year, when I'm teaching, from one perspective, while I'm teaching this, there's no one there. Other than the cameraman, there's no one else here. So when I teach, I'm looking at like the camera, like an inanimate object. So it's different than when I'm actually there. The feeling is different. But as much as I'm able, I'm imagining that you are all there. I'm just imagining, and it's not like the most vivid of imagination, because I have to teach also, right? I have to teach the focus and focus on that, and I can't both imagine you and teach the Dharma at the same time. But in any case, before I teach, I imagine that all of you are there, and that way I feel like there's some sort of a connection between us. I'm not thinking that I'm only speaking to an inanimate camera. For my own part, I have the intention that I'm actually speaking to you. And for you, if you don't think that you're just looking at some screen, some flat piece of technology, and instead imagine that you're receiving Dharma instructions directly from me, I think we'll have a good connection with each other. And I think we'll have a good connection with each other. So in brief, when I teach this, we can't put all of this into practice immediately, but when I teach it and you listen, it moves us somehow. In particular, it helps us see a lot of our own faults. Everything that's taught in here is like we feel like it's taught to us. It's pointing out our own faults. And if we get even just that much of an understanding, it's really excellent. In any case, and so merely explaining it does not really serve much purpose, and merely listening does not serve much purpose. I think it's extremely important for us to incorporate it into our mind streams over and over again, and make efforts so that it can actually change us. That's what's most important. If we can do this, then it's at that point, only at that point, that there will be the real great benefit of the Dharma. And if we don't, It's difficult to say the Dharma, like just merely reciting manis with your mouths or carrying a mala in your hands could possibly bring us much real benefit. It's very difficult for that. So please, everyone, keep this in mind. So this year, during the Kagyu Monlam, we haven't had any special events such as those we have had in previous years. However, we will have the cotton-clad procession of the 6 yogis of Naropa, the 16 Arhats procession, and the Kagyu procession, just as we have in the past. A few days ago in a meeting, I spoke about the people who will be in the 16 Arhats procession. So as last year, the monks should be chosen from the Kagyu Shedras as the Arhats and as their retinue according to their height. And so the people should be chosen, I said, to the people involved. And it's best to pick them ahead of time. Likewise, with the Kagyu procession, it's the same. This year in particular, we printed especially for the Kagyu Monlam, we made a slightly smaller version of the Jang Kagyu and had it printed. So this year we will be able to read the Jang Kagyu at the Monlam. Similarly, in the cotton-clad procession, I don't really know how many lamas are participating this year, but regardless of the number, I hope they will be during the practices of the 6 yogas, and then on the last day, do the cotton-clad procession as we did last year. So with the cotton-clad procession, during the Monlams at the time of the 7th Karmapa Chudajasa, there was a tradition that the Shedra monks would debate and the retreat lamas would do a cotton-clad procession. So this is why we are planning to do this every year. And so please everyone keep this in mind. And so we will leave it for there for now. Thank you very much.